Okay, so now let's get back to the Lagrangian a little bit and uh, look at some conditions that come because of the Lagrangian. So let's start with the original formulation that we were looking at, the canonical representation of Lagrangian. So let's say we were looking at Lagrangian of x, and basically it was about minimizing f of x, okay, subject to the condition that gx is greater than or equal to 0. Okay. So what we found was that if we minimize this, it is equivalent to minimizing fx subject to that condition that gx is greater than or equal to 0, is same as working with this particular minimization. All right. And what this implies is that your solution will be such that either gx is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, all these conditions will be satisfied. So gx will be either equal to 0 or greater than 0, and it will never be less than 0, because that's what we want. We don't want gx to be less than 0. We have an inequality constraint. Then we will have lambda greater than or equal to 0, right? And then we will have lambda times gx will be equal to 0. So what that means is either gx is 0 or lambda is 0. So what does that mean? So if we go back to that drawing that I had of these yellow curves, right? So the center of the yellow curves is the minimum of fx if there was no constraint. Okay. And then we drew a red curve which basically represented the boundary of gx is equal to 0, and we thought that, so now there are two possibilities, right? So one possibility is that the gx greater than 0 lies in this direction, and the other possibility is that I will draw the same thing, but gx greater than or equal to 0 lies on the other side. So let's say it's the same contours and it's the same boundary for gx equal to 0, but gx greater than 0 lies on this side. So this is gx greater than 0, and here gx greater than 0 is on the other side, right? So for both these conditions, the math works out slightly differently. The inequality works out slightly differently. Now if you look at the first case, we already looked at that, where we saw that the ideal solution will be such that the ideal solution will have a will be tangential to the gx, right? So it will be tangential to gx equal to 0, right? And on that ideal solution, the derivative, the gradient direction of fx and the gradient direction of gx, they are going to be 180 degrees opposite of each other, and because of that they will cancel out. They will be aligned. They will both be in one direction. They will both be, if we go in this direction, both of them will have the maximum increase. So if we add them using a constant, we can basically put the joint gradient to be equal to 0. Okay. So for that particular case, gx is greater than 0. All right. And because the two have to cancel each other out, lambda will not be 0. Lambda will also be, gx will be equal to 0. So case 1, case 1, case 2. So this is case 1, this is case 2. Okay. So in case 1, what we will have is that your gx is going to be 0. Gx is equal to 0. All right. And consequently your lambda is not going to be 0. So it is going to be greater than 0. But because gx is 0, we will add, when we multiply the two, we will get lambda times gx is equal to 0. Case 2, when gx greater than 0 lies in the same region, it lies in the same region where the fx, unconstrained fx, is minimized, right? Then gx actually does not matter. We are just minimizing fx. That means lambda is 0. So in this case you will have lambda equal to 0, okay, and gx will be greater than 0 because we are not on the red boundary, we are on the left side of the red boundary, and because of that, because lambda is 0, again we will have lambda times gx is equal to 0. So for the conditions on the right are satisfied for both the two cases. So what this means is that if we go back to that objective function in terms of a, which was, let me see if I got all the terms correct, ai, right, minus half sum over I and sum over j. Which was equivalent to what we had earlier, right? Where we had this LWBA, right? Where we had half of mod W square, right? Minus sum over I, AI, Ti W transpose Xi plus B minus 1, right? So these two were equivalent optimization problems that we were looking at. Now the three conditions that we looked at where gx is greater than equal to 0, lambda greater than equal to 0, and then the product of the two is going to be equal to 0 because we will have one of them equal to 0 in both cases. So what we will get here is that AI will be greater than equal to 0. We know that already by definition, okay, and then we will have training point, okay, times y of xi, y as a function of xi, okay, minus 1 is going to be greater than equal to 0, and the two together, ai times ti, this will be equal to 0. So these are the three conditions that will be satisfied for this formulation of SVM. Okay. So because of this, what we can get is we can get different conditions to solve for W and B. So W we already eliminated, but we can get B now. So because of this, what we can get for B is that Ti is going to be sum over all the points that belong to support vectors where ai is non-zero or aj is non-zero. Okay, we will have aj, okay, tj, xi transpose xj plus b equal to plus b. This summation will be equal to 1. Sorry, ti times. And when we solve for this, what we will get is b is equal to, okay, so we are not counting any of those where ai is equal to 0. Number of support vectors, okay, sum of I belonging to support vectors, the set of support vectors. So what are set of support vectors? ai greater than 0 implies support vector. Okay, that means that xi belongs to the set S. Okay, implies xi, the training point xi belongs to the set S. Okay, and for those points exactly this will turn out to be equal to 0, not greater than 0. It will be equal to 0 because it's on the margin. Okay. And for these points we can define the bias in terms of these points, and it will be ti minus sum of all the points belonging to the support vector. So notice that we are taking pairs of support vectors now because everything will be in terms of dot product. So we will have aj, tj okay, and times what I cannot write it here is xi transpose xj, and that will be the bracket close. So that will be the value of the bias B. Okay. So this basically completes our derivation of the dual form for hard SVM. Okay. So this hard SVM is basically completely solved in terms of dot products. Wherever you see xi transpose xj, you can replace it by k xi xj, and wherever you see x transpose xj, you can replace it by k x xj, right? So that is, and you can plug in any kernel. Now let's look at some example kernels. Okay, before that, let's quickly look at the KKT conditions. These are called Karush-Kuhn-Tucker conditions, the three conditions that I talked about. Okay, so how do we interpret this? Wherever you have a equal to 0, those are the support vector points. Okay, those are the points that are not support vectors. Do not belong to the set S, the set of support vectors S. So for these points, okay, this particular condition need not be 0. It can actually be greater than 0. What that means is that they are further away from the margin. Okay, these points do not define the boundary of the decision boundary, because for them AI is 0. These points can be moved around so long as they do not cross the margin. They can be moved around anywhere, and the boundary of the support vector machine will not change. On the other hand, if we have AI is greater than 0 or AN is greater than 0, then necessarily the other condition, the other KKT condition will be satisfied, which is that they are on the margin, and we will get this expression equal to 0. These points define the boundary. So these are support vectors. Okay, and if we move these points, then we have to retrain the classifier. We have to re-estimate the boundary of the support vectors, the boundary of the classifier, and these are the support vectors. Okay. Okay. So now let's see how we can replace x transpose x, xi transpose xj with k xi xj, right? So if we do that, we will get, so let's say if we have a Gaussian kernel, then how does that change the boundary, right? So what is k xi xj? Basically for Gaussian kernel, it is going to be exp of minus some kappa, some constant kappa, okay, xi minus xj. Okay, so that is basically the Gaussian kernel. So what will happen is, let's say we have the x1 x2 boundary, okay, and we have some positive points and we have some negative points, lots of negative points, lots of positive points. So because we are only interested in those points for which AI is greater than 0, right? Those are the only points that are support vectors, and they might look like something like this. Those will be the points that are closer to each other in some sense, not in the linear sense, not in the linear Euclidean distance sense, but in some sense. So hopefully it will be this point, perhaps this point, perhaps this point, and this point. Okay. So now think about a Gaussian kernel sitting on top of these points. So basically what we have on these points is we have some Gaussian function that is decreasing around them, right? And that defines a four-dimensional feature space, right? Which is basically the Gaussian kernel as defined by the distance from these 4 points. Okay. And some linear combination of that, when it is equal to 0, that will be the decision boundary. So your decision boundary will be something like the following, right? And that decision boundary is going to be linear in the phi space, but it is going to be non-linear in the x space. Okay, so this smooth some sort of a smooth surface around a sparse set of points, a subset of points which are the support vectors, and then using those smooth functions, the smooth surface in some sort of an isotropic way. Isotropic means that in whichever direction we go, there will be a smooth degradation of the contribution of that point, smooth decrease in the contribution of that point. Using that is what is being done by a Gaussian kernel. Now there are other kernels that are also useful, not just Gaussian kernel. There is something called a polynomial kernel, for example. Right? And in polynomial kernel you will have xi transpose xj plus some constant c and to the power d. Okay, so d is the degree of the polynomial. Okay, you can have a cosine kernel where you have xi transpose xj, okay, and then divided by the L2 norm of xi, the L2 norm of xj. Okay. So there are multiple different kernels. These are some of the useful kernels, and you can have a linear kernel which is just xi transpose xj, which means that there is no non-linear transformation. You will just find a linear boundary in the xi xj space. So all these kernels together define are useful in different ways. Now the advantage of these kernels is that not just that we have these 3-4 popular kernels, but you can actually define your own kernels depending on the data. So let's say you are comparing two different texts. There are kernels that are defined for comparing texts. So what the kernel is encoding is how similar are xi and xj to each other. So if they are more similar, then xi will have more contribution in computing the output for xj. If they are less similar, then xi will have less contribution in computing the output for xj. So this goes back to that kernel interpolation that I showed for regression a couple of slides ago, right? So that similarity is being coded by this function, and that similarity, you have a lot of flexibility in defining what is similarity, so long as you can define it in some sort of a positive semi-definite sense, symmetric positive semi-definite sense, right? So symmetricity is actually a part of the positive semi-definiteness. So you can also have kernels that compare two different graph data, for example. So there are different kernels, and that's a little bit out of scope for this course, but just suffice it to say that you have to find a kernel that adequately represents some sort of a notion of similarity for the data that you have. If the similarity is in a Euclidean distance sense, then perhaps Gaussian kernel will be fine. The radial basis function Gaussian is also called RBF, radial basis function kernel, is going to be fine. If it is something else, you might want to find out what are good kernels for a different type of data, or for a different notion of similarity. Okay.